If you're a young general manager stepping into your first leadership role at a private club, you're entering the business at a uniquely challenging time. Today's clubs aren't just golf courses with dining rooms anymore. They're complex. They're multi-million dollar hospitality businesses managing everything from championship golf experiences to family programming, fitness facilities, and events, all while trying to compete for top talent in an incredibly tight labor market. My guest today is Joel Livingood, General Manager and CEO of Interlachen Country Club in Edina, Minnesota. Over the past 9 years, Joel has led Interlachen through a transformational period that included $70 million in capital improvements, a Donald Ross golf course restoration recognized as the top restoration project in the United States, and the development of a comprehensive West Campus featuring fitness, tennis, and family dining. But what makes Joel's story particularly valuable isn't just the impressive facilities, it's how he's built a culture of accountability, developed a high performing team of 450 people, and partnered with his board to create a governance model that actually works. In this conversation, we talk about why defining your mission and values isn't just some sort of feel good exercise. It's essential for making tough decisions. We explore what it takes to build and lead a team capable of delivering best in class hospitality. And Joel shares practical advice for young GMs navigating the pressure cooker of modern club leadership. Here's my conversation with Joel Livingood. You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. Well, Joel, thanks so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's always good to see you. Last time we talked, it was the midst of the pandemic, and I can't, everyone was innovating and trying different things, and now here we are, 5 years removed from that, and you guys at Interlachen have been really, really busy. Can you give us a rundown? I mean, from the clubhouse stuff to the golf course, what have you guys been up to over the last several years?
Yeah, of course. You mentioned it when we were catching up before the call. It's been 9 years since I got to Interlachen, and I tell people it feels like 20, but in the best possible way. We started out on this transformational journey in 2017 to really, I won't say reimagine, but reinvigorate Interlachen. And to do that, we looked a lot to our past. Every organization evolves and goes through different periods of time, and there's all these inflection points. And Interlachen's had a number of them, and fortunately, here 116 years later, at each of those inflection points, our membership and those in management have made a lot of good decisions, and we've been privileged to be a part of some of those for now nearly the last 10 years. And since we last caught up, we've made what we described as a transformational investment, our campus. We built what's called our West Campus, which is really our athletic, family-forward component of the club. We've got a standalone restaurant we call the Lodge, which is kind of a drop in with your family, in and out in 45 minutes kind of place. Everything on the menu is under $20. We built an indoor tennis facility to expand that programming year round. And I won't say the big surprise in the project, but probably one of the most exciting parts of the project was about a 15,000 square foot fitness facility that we had high hopes and expectations for, but has vastly exceeded all those in terms of engagement and use. And then at Interlachen, core part of our mission here is our golf course and championship golf experience. We did the first major restoration of the golf course since Donald Ross was here in 1919. Worked with an incredible architect, a gentleman named Andrew Green, who's done a lot of Ross restoration work, and another place where really had high expectations. And I remember being out on the project a number of times with our director of golf, Nathan, saying, man, is this really going to be as good as we think it is being out here? Right? There's a natural bias when you're involved in something as deeply as we were. And now, a year after opening, just incredible feedback from members, guests, and folks across the industry. So it's really been a transformational period for the club and a lot of fun. And I think the best part is probably the best is yet to come. So
Yeah. And I mean, mentioned, I think it's the top restoration project in the country by Golf Digest magazine, which is pretty amazing recognition as well.
yeah, it's fun to be recognized. I think a little bit of part of Interlachen's culture is a little bit understated and humble, but certainly fun to be recognized, particularly by groups like that.
Well, you have had, no doubt. I mean, the club has spent a lot of money, in the last several years. I say that not lately, but to do that and to get some of those things done, I mean, it requires exceptional leadership as well. Can you, I mean, just to, so congratulations to you and to the board and all those people that were involved in making this happen, because it's remarkable, and spending a lot of years in the Twin Cities and really understanding Interlochen's position in that market. Boy, it's always been the premier club, and it's really cool to see all that you've done there. Um, but it's changed. I mean, and then you said 9 years. Can you just kind of talk about and just the gaps that maybe you saw when you got to the club, or maybe gaps is maybe not the right way, but the opportunities that you saw when you first got to the club 9 years ago, 9 seasons ago?
When I arrived at Interlachen in 2017, to your point, Interlachen had always had a tremendous place in the history of golf, and was largely recognized as one of the premier clubs here in the Twin Cities and in the Midwest. But internally, I'm not so sure we viewed ourselves that way. The club hadn't entirely recovered from the 2008 recession, and so we took a really hard look at who we are and what our mission was, what was important to us, what were those values that were guiding our decisions, and ultimately where did we want to go. And as I reflect back on all we've accomplished during this period of time, it is $70 million of investment, which I think a lot of people arrive and they see all these things we've built, and they look at what it would cost to do that, and kind of get hung up there. But what I tell folks is the most important thing we did, what we absolutely had to do before we could do anything else, was get really clear about that mission and those set of values, and make sure that everyone on our board and our management team were aligned, our membership was bought in, because we faced a lot of challenges over the last 9 years doing what we've done. It wasn't easy, and to your point, these decisions are hard, and it requires a lot of courage and conviction, and all of that is much easier when you're really clear about who you are and what's important to you. And I give our membership and our board a lot of credit for spending that time and buying into that process. And when kind of the going got tough, saying, "Hey, it is hard, but this is the right thing for the institution of the club over the long term." And so that's the decision we're gonna make.
Can you just talk about that a little bit? I mean, this is, we have so much to get to, but what you just said, so many people will kind of go, "Oh, really? Our mission statement, our values, like, why do we have to do that? Let's just make these changes. Let's just do this." But I'm with you in that camp, and that it's so important to really figure out where you're going first. But what was that discussion like within the club? If you're able to share just kind of that, was it a fairly easy conversation, or was there a little bit of hand wringing and arm twisting to try to get people to really realize the value of that?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't say it's easy. Change is hard, especially in the private club environment, especially at a place with as rich of a history as Interlaken. And I would tell you a few things. One, we actually went to our past to better define who we were today and where we wanted to go. Somebody told me once. They said, "Joel, your job here, Interlaken has an identity crisis, and it's your job to figure out who we are." And some people think we're a golf club with some country club amenities, and other people think that we're a family club, and that's hard when we've got this top 100 golf experience. Um, and we actually went back to our past and why were we founded? We were absolutely founded as an 18-hole championship golf course, but early on, if you look at the early 1900 articles in the Star Tribune, it talks about kind of the social epicenter that Interlaken had become. You'll very early in our archives see photos of families here socializing and celebrating the holidays together. In 1954, after the World War, people weren't joining the club, and so members went door to door to gather votes to get the pool built. And there were a host of great championship golf events over that period of time too. And so the messaging was, we actually can be both of these things. We've been both of these things for the last 100 years, and now it's about kind of redefining that for today and saying, hey, our mission is to enrich the lives of our members by providing outstanding championship golf and family experiences. And so you hear three things in there. It's actually not about all these great facilities and spaces of the golf course we have. We're here to enrich the lives of our members. When we ask our members why they're here and why they enjoy the club, they don't necessarily talk to us about the golf course or the fitness facilities, but they talk to us about the memories and experiences they have in those spaces with their family and their friends and what it's meant to their life. So first and foremost, we're here to enrich their lives. How we do that at Interlachen is through outstanding championship golf and family experiences. And outstanding means something. That sets a bar for how we're going to do this. And then if you get into our values and kind of those guideposts for decisions, you see some of the same. One of our values is tradition, which might be obvious given a place like Interlachen. But what does tradition really mean? Tradition didn't mean putting on your sport coat and your khaki pants and coming to dinner. The tradition was that you came to dinner every Sunday night with your family. And so as we fast forward into this period of time and said, why aren't families coming to dinner at Interlachen? It's because they didn't have a venue or a place where they felt comfortable maybe bringing the kids casually after their soccer game on a Sunday afternoon, so they chose somewhere else. And so, understanding that mission statement, but then kind of what values shape their experience. I'll give you a couple other examples. One of them is excellence, and excellence sometimes gets overused. I think it's really easy for every organization to say they want to be excellent, but that's a distinct choice. We're pursuing the highest quality in everything that we do. That informs how we think about investments in our spaces, the type of product we're putting on the plate in the restaurant, the type of conditions they're going to have on the golf course. That certainly comes with a set of costs, but we've decided that's part of who we want to be. And then, honestly, I think the balance of tradition for us is innovation, and that might feel like a really forward-looking, progressive idea today in the club world. I'd argue we've been innovative since 1909. There's an incredible picture of one of our founders standing on this completely barren farmland in 1909, just kind of looking off in the distance. How innovative were they to think about what they were about to build and what it's become today? And I can talk about all of them in that light, and we talk to our members about them in that light. I'll give you one more. Another one of our values is stewardship. Simply put, this isn't about you; it's about the next generation. Our members' job, their role, their obligation, their responsibility is to protect and enhance Interlachen for the next generation. And so we talk about these things with our members, and we cite examples from both our past and how we're thinking about the club in the future to bring some real context to them. Because I think, to your point, yeah, it's just words on a page. They are words on a page, but those words on the page guide our actions and guide our decisions. And when we're faced with to go left or go right, that's the lens at which we look through them. That's how we orient our board members and train our board members to say, when you step into this room, you've got a lot of your own personal opinions. You've got those are influenced by your friends and your family, and those are important. But our job, once we've agreed that this is the right mission and set of values, is to look at decisions through this lens. And we've been steadfast in that for all of those 9 years. We just sent a leadership update out today to all of our members. Goes out about quarterly from our board chair, myself, and right at the top of that's our mission statement. Right at the bottom of that's our values, and right in the middle are our goals. And that whole message is about what are we doing to support these things,
So
and
constantly
that's where it lives.
and
Yeah,
constantly reinforcing those things. I mean, in all your communications. So when you have, big changes or restoration projects you want to do, it all goes back to, does this help us accomplish our mission and does it align with our core values?
yeah. I mean, repetitions and reminders are a part of learning. I tell my wife that all the time. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
learning. You just gotta remind me.
that's
Um,
right.
but you see, they're on the wall. You walk up on our third floor right before you kind of walk into the conference room where our board meets. Those mission and values are on the wall, and then we've actually got them kind of sprinkled throughout campus for our members to see too.
Yeah.
When we built the West Campus, we put a plaque right above the fireplace that reminds people of who we are and what's important to us. We talk to you about it in the admissions process before we even extend you an invitation to join. We talk about them when you're oriented. We talk about them,
Yeah.
and then you continue to see that show up in communication from club leadership, and be used as a lens to, or an opportunity to tell a story about a project or thing we're planning to do. And again, that's not all. I can't emphasize it's not all about dollars and cents and spending, right? It informs how we think about club policy. It informs how we think about our culture and what it means to be here. It informs the type of team members we select. It shows up in a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
and it's a slow burn. Like I feel like now, just about 10 years later, it's really working.
Yeah.
Um, but halfway through, I'm not sure. There are still some skeptics. It's
Right.
hard to be skeptical today.
But committing to it and making it, just saying committed to it is such a big part of that. And I'm wondering, where in your background did some of this stuff bubble up for you? I mean, you spent time at North Oaks. prior to Interlachen and Oxbow Golf and Country Club as well. Like, is this something that you just accumulated, like your understanding of this through time, or was there an aha moment for you or someone who was to, help to enlighten you in that way?
Um, it's a good question. I think I would tell you three things. One, I mean, you can look behind me. I'm a reader and a learner, and there's not a lot of books written about strategies and success at private clubs, but there's a lot of books written about strategies and success in businesses, big and small. And so I feel like I've always had a little bit of a just infatuation with business and strategy and how you think about problem solving for different types of products and experiences. And in my case, that blended with a real passion for golf and food and beverage and hospitality. And so I think some of it comes from that. I think the rest of it comes from honestly surrounding myself with people a heck of a lot smarter than I am. I've had great board leaders and board members that have brought their personal and professional experiences into the boardroom to say, hey, here's how we maybe should think about this. And it was just really clear at Interlochen early on that all the ingredients here were here for really incredible experience. But that was going to be hard if we were having this kind of constant conflict or debate about who we are. And so maybe we were lucky. We have this, it's pretty unusual to have a family club like Interlochen. We have 900 or so families at the club today, and nearly 90% of them live within 3 miles. And then you combine that with a top 100 championship golf course. That doesn't exist in a lot of places. Usually those things are pretty separate. Or if you've got a family club, you just got a pretty good golf course. And so I think a little bit of it was by necessity. But all of the brands and businesses that I admire the most and look to are really clear about those two things, and they've found ways for them to show up materially in their experiences.
Let's talk about that. Just keep building off of that because you have built a brand. I follow Interlachen on LinkedIn. I see a lot of the stuff you guys post. I've watched a lot of your videos. Um, you know, Plugging into Heart as being, and I'd love to learn more about that as well. But you have really you've created a brand, and I'm sure you've got a great team of people who have helped bring this to life. But where did you learn how to do that stuff? Is it just from reading those books behind you, or like what is what's the key there?
Well, you said one thing that's important for me to recognize. You said you've got a team of people, and I would tell you that all of this work. I'm fortunate to be able to sit in a chair like this and tell the story because it's a fun story to tell now. But we've got an incredible team of 450 or so people that show up here every week with the same sense of passion that I do for the experience that we're delivering, and that shows up in thousands of different interactions and ways every week. And so I'd be remiss if I don't recognize them. It doesn't happen without them. It doesn't happen without our members. And I think that's the sign of a great club. Um, but the brand itself is we think about it that way. And I don't know if most clubs think about their brand as much as they should. And maybe Interlochen's kind of national recognition or, reputation, um, you know, was important to me realizing that early on, but we think about it like that. Everything that we do, everything we post, everything we say communicates some message. And do we have a cohesive message? And does that message align with our mission, vision, and values and the experience we want people to have when they're here? And so we've put a lot of time and effort into that, a lot of thought into that. Really at every stage, how we communicate externally to prospective members, how we communicate externally just to people who interact with us in any way, how we communicate to the industry, how we communicate to prospective employees, and then internally, same or more effort into the messaging that our members receive, day in and day out, and is that can be reflective of the experience when they arrive at the club or that event, and then with our team, right? That internal audience is really important. We're setting a standard for how we're asking them to show up every day, and that's another thing. It's been a slow burn. I mean, we had a half a person in communications when I started, and then a full time person, and then two people. And now today we've got a team of three full time people, and frankly, they got more work than they know what to do with. We got more ideas than we do people,
Right.
but we do think about it like a brand in a really intentional way, and whether that's in voice or imaging, what have you. It's all intentional and thoughtful, or at least we hope it is.
Yeah, well, it's certainly. I mean, you see it, which is really interesting. And I go back. 10, 15 years ago, even, before the Solheim Cup. And Interlachen was just it was a really nice country club in Edina. But I mean, the brand is strong. It feels like you can feel, I think you can feel the presence in the community. You certainly see it online. And I got to believe that helps you tremendously when it comes to recruiting and building that team and keeping a team that you have to have if you want to deliver the member experience that you're able to deliver. It starts with having the right people. How do you how do you show up for that team? I mean, 400 plus employees that are, I'm assuming a mix of full-time and contract or seasonal workers. But how do you, like, when you think about yourself as a leader, how do you try to show up for them every day?
I'll tell you a couple of things. I think it's important. We talked about our mission and our values. We've got 5 goals, and I'll tell you 2 of them. The first is to enhance our member experience and deliver memorable, best-in-class hospitality. And the second one is to be a top workplace and attract and retain talented team members. And you said it. That's kind of 1A and 1B, or 1A and 1B, depending on how you want to look at it. And so for me, I know that that's my most important thing every day. And I tell our department leaders that's their most important role every day. You know, make sure that you're showing up for your team. How are they doing? What do they need to be successful? Can you remove some roadblocks to make their work easier and better? Do they think you have a good understanding of their work and how they do it? And so I think one of the things, Interlochen had about half that many team members in 2017. We're 3 times smaller in revenue and 30% smaller in members. And I always said it was really easy just to kind of everything was located here in the clubhouse. If I wanted to change something or influence something, I just walk outside my office. I'd spend a few shifts in the restaurant. I could go spend some time down on around our golf operation. And now we're just bigger in terms of people and how we're spread out. And important that you kind of don't lose that connection to the front line. Don't You got to stay really close to the member and the team experience. And so you'll still see me often on the floor and interacting and working along side our team and all of our outlets. And you'll see all of our department leaders doing those same things. I was just sitting in the office with Joseph, our new director of food and beverage, and I said, "What's challenging you today?" Because I feel like I should be on the floor more. I feel like I should be working alongside the team more. I'm getting bogged down by some of these administrative things. Okay. For him to be his best for his team, I got to help you now. How do I remove some of those roadblocks? Where can we shift some of that work? How can we help you prioritize some of that work? But we're looking for people like Joseph, who their favorite part of the job is being on the floor, interacting with the team and the members. And I think that's the only way you can do it when you're trying to deliver memorable and best in class hospitality. So we need our people to understand that.
And so I hear you. One of the things I hear you, because I was asking, like, how do you want to show up for your team? It really is like, how can I help you remove obstacles? I mean, for your
Yeah,
team,
and
is that
sometimes those obstacles are here, right? I always say, like, don't let process get in the way of people. Make sure our people are empowered to make good decisions, make memorable happen. Make sure our people understand what best in class means. So I was like, if there's frustration either between them and their supervisor, or us and them, like, that frustration is probably born out of some misalignment of expectations, and so you got to be close to do that. Other times those roadblocks are in their personal life. Like, you got to get to know your team members. I mean, I think if anything's changed since the last time you and I talked 5 years ago, it's that just the empathy and understanding you need to lead with to win in the competitive marketplace that we're in. You're not working from home at Interlachen. You're not working from home in any private club, and so do you understand what's going on in their life? And we talk about for our members, it's the experience is kind of one of one. But I encourage our leaders to take that same approach for their team, and that's not, it might not be equal, but it's certainly not unfair. I'd probably argue the opposite. It is fair because everybody's coming from someplace with some different set of circumstances, sometimes better, sometimes worse. And so, how do you get to know that teammate and help even remove some roadblocks in their personal life here at work so they can do a better job? And that's a tall order. It's emotional sometimes. Sometimes you can't do it. But there's roadblocks we can remove here, and by getting to know them personally and what's going on in their lives, we can try and remove some otherwise, and that's where I think, like, the momentum really comes, and we've seen that in really strong retention in places where you normally don't see it.
yeah. Marcy Mills from Copland, Keebler and Wallace was telling me that one of the most requested characteristics of general manager candidates recently has been The clubs want a general manager who's going to spend a lot of time with their members and glad handing and things like that. Is it, in your opinion, is that if you have the right directors and the people who are also really good with members and want to spend time with members, is there as much pressure on the GM to actually spend that time with members? Like I look at your job and running a team that large in a business that's the size of Interlachen and not unlike a lot of clubs. I don't know how you have time to talk to people.
Yeah, so I say I find myself saying this a lot about leadership. You read a lot, you listen to a lot of podcasts, you hear people talk, and I think people always like to talk in extremes, right? So you always need to do this, or you never have to do that. And the real answer is it's balance or tension. I don't even think it's balance; it's tension. And what side's that tension on? There's times where I know, I need to be more, engaged on the floor and visible in front of, both members and our team, right? And so you shift your priorities that way. And there's other times you say, you know what, like you got to be able to hunker down and get some work done. That changes day to day, week to week, month to month. And I think the best leaders, the people that I admire the most, they find the right tension. And so is it an important part of my job to be engaged with members? Absolutely. Right. Just like I want to stay close to the front line of our team, I want to stay close to our members and the experience they have. I want them to know me, feel comfortable sharing information with me, asking questions, giving me their feedback. Um, you know, Building trust. Right. You don't do $70 million worth of capital improvements and change and grow the way we do without trust and leadership. And you can only build so much trust from behind your computer or email or some video. So I don't want to underplay the importance of that engagement. But to your question, day in and day out, absolutely. Like all of those people on the front lines, starting with our department leaders, need to, be an extension of me, and their teams need to be an extension of them. And so, getting the right people in the right seats on the bus is critical. Can't be everywhere at all once. I don't even visit every, area of our club every day. I'd like to, I try to, but there's tension there. Are you in the right places at the right times when you need to? And you got to make the right decision there most of the time.
Yeah. How has your relationship, speaking of tension, how has your relationship with the board evolved over the last 9 seasons?
Mm-hmm. Governance was a big part of the transition here. I remember sitting in my first interview with the current club president, and we talked a lot about what we thought Interlaken needed to thrive. And there was certainly capital investment, and there was certainly some improvements in the experience, both for members and the team. But we probably spent the most time talking about governance. And I think if I were to say, if understanding our mission, values, and goals was the first key to our success the last almost 10 years, I would say getting governance right was a really close second.
Mhm.
Uh, Without, with poor governance, those mission, values, and goals aren't going to stick. When the going would have gotten tough, we would have pivoted the other direction.
Mhm.
And so I think, understanding the roles and responsibilities of the board and management, and in the case of Interlaken, remember one of our board members said, he goes, "I'm tired of picking the Easter brunch menu." And it's our job to ensure the club's managed well, but it's your job to manage the club. And so we've got really clear roles and responsibilities. We got a real clear delegation authority, what I can and cannot do, what our team can and cannot do. Um, and I think more than anything, there's a great sense of accountability between myself and the board. And I feel like sometimes this is where our industry um, gets it wrong. You hear a lot about tough governing environments, and for whatever reason, the relationship between the board and that general manager didn't work out. My view and how we've approached it here has been, if we know who we are, if we know what's important, if we know what our goals are, there's a set of metrics that tells us if we're making progress or not. And it is my job and our team's job to make sure we're doing that. It's the board's job to hold us accountable for doing that. It's their job to help give us the resources to do that. But at the end of the day, if we're not delivering the results that are expected of us, they're probably going to find somebody that is. And so we talk a lot about accountability, results, and resources on our team. If we agree on where we're going, we're held accountable for doing that. We deliver the results, then we get more resources, and we get to pour those resources back into the business, back into our team. And that's what really fuels kind of that ongoing success.
How much of where you are today do you feel like you earned over the last 9 years versus when you walked in the door 9 years ago? They're like, all right, Joel, this is, here are the keys to the car. You go, here are the metrics. Here's how this is going to work. You go and you go run the club for us.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely gotten stronger and stronger every year. I think we were really aligned on what we all wanted on day one. Um, we were all clear about me being accountable for delivering upon that. But every year that we've delivered those results has built more and more trust and support, which has allowed us the resources, and I'd say in some degree the risks that we've been able to take because our team's proven they can do that.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on us. That accountability doesn't stop. We're midway through our fiscal year. We had a pretty good first half of the year. I just sat down with our team in our last team meeting, and we reforecasted the second half of the year, and we took a good hard look at you know what we had just accomplished and how much that would have to be redeployed in the second half of the year to keep the momentum going. But there's a segment of those, there's a portion of those positive results that's in the bank. Like we're not going to hedge the second half of the year. Like, we've got really high standards for performance here. And, sometimes people come to Interlachen and tell us like, man, it's kind of hard to work here, or or at least the first year is really hard. I think we used to kind of shy away from that and, tell this story about how incredible the experience is and, wanting to be a part of it. I think we've learned, and what our team shared with us is, you know, don't shy away from what it takes to do that. It's hard to do that. Expectations are high, standards are high, and so yeah, it's absolutely gotten stronger. I've gotten, my relationship with the board's gotten stronger and stronger each year that we perform the way that we do, and kind of our team feels a real great sense of pride in continuing to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Just listening to all this stuff, go back to your mission, vision, values. It doesn't happen unless you have that stuff. Like I don't know if you've read Traction. Have you read
Mm-hmm.
Traction, Gino
Mm-hmm.
Wickman's book? It's like so many of those things when it's set and you tell people, yeah, this is kind of a pressure cooker and it is going to be hard.
Yeah,
And before they hire in, and if that's their chance to say, it's maybe not the place for me. It sounds like it's a little too intense. Great. You've just won a huge battle right there, knowing that we're not going to bring in the wrong person.
correct.
Uh, what struck me though is like when you hire like that and you are hiring people that are top-notch people, they're not inexpensive as well, right? I mean, you're paying to hire, or you're developing people, and you're doing a great job with that as well. But it's that making that investment, and not all clubs may see the value in that. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally fair. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but if you believe in an outstanding championship golf and family experience, and you're striving to deliver memorable and best in class hospitality every day, you're not going to do that with average talent. And that gets back to honestly your most recent question. The board and myself and our team are aligned on that. We're we're aligned on who we are and where we're going. We're also aligned on the resources required to do that. And they've given us those resources, and that doesn't mean that you've got an endless pocketbook and the ability to spend with no end. You can't pay the most everywhere. You can't pay the most in a lot of jobs. What I tell people is really three things, and this was one of our most recent board presidents. He shared kind of a similar philosophy with me. I think people want three things. Like, first and foremost, they want a job where they feel like they can make an impact and a difference. And so we spend a lot of time trying to connect day to day work with the end outcome. Whether you're a dishwasher, a lifeguard, an assistant golf professional, or on the grounds crew, your work matters to this experience. You want to be part of something bigger than yourself. And a lot of times, maybe particularly in today's world, doing that at a private club isn't as fulfilling, but let us help you understand why it is fulfilling. So that's number one. Two, you want recognition for a job well done. And so, we try to, reward and recognize and appreciate our team when they go above and beyond, and do a great job. And then I think the last thing is you want the opportunity to grow and improve. And so we spend a lot of time with our team. Where are you? Where do you want to be? And how can we get there? Like the underlying assumption is yes, everyone wants to be compensated fairly. And so, what's the market for your job? We want to be in the 75th percentile, give or take a little bit.
Sure.
I'm going to probably have a hard time getting, you know, best in class at the median, but I can't afford to pay everybody in the 90th percentile. And so, we focus really hard on those first three things that don't cost us a lot of money at all, and we provide really competitive compensation. And that recipe's worked well for us.
Yeah. I love it. Um, was there a time where you had to get past a board that's or over in the time that if you've had this a board that wants to be too involved operationally? And
Mhm.
how do you get through that? How did you get through that? What does that look like to try to like navigate through that? Because sometimes it can feel like for a leader, for a general manager, like wow, I'm just in the crossfires of member like interaction and members getting involved operationally. Like how do you and what is your recommendation for those people who are kind of in the crosshairs of that, trying to get through that?
Yeah. You'll find I do a lot of things in three, so I'll give you three things. Um, the first is get over it. It's gonna happen. So I used to get so upset, even in our good governance model here, when board members or committee members would get involved in things that I thought were operational. And I think you got to remember, like they're getting involved because they care. They're passionate about this place and they're passionate about the experience and they want it to be great. Sometimes that can be misguided or land in a place that you don't want to, but I don't let it upset me anymore. Number one. Number two, I try to be a partner with them in that, and I try to be the professional and the expert in that. And so if they're sharing a piece of feedback with me or they're trying to dig into a place maybe that I feel is too operational, that's where I try to let my expertise show and say, here's I hear what you're saying, here's how we're thinking about it, here's what we're going to do. And then I think the last thing is we try really hard here to arm ourselves with good data so that doesn't happen. A lot of times I feel like people get involved, yeah, absolutely, because they care, but because things aren't going the way they think they should be going, or they don't think that we're hearing them. So if I fit, the ultimate objective is to address these things before they rise up. And so we survey and gather feedback daily across our operation. We respond to it. We report it to the board, the good and the bad, and tell them what we're doing with it. And most times that keeps them in their lane because it's usually born out of something that's affecting them personally or a friend personally. And when they maybe see that now this maybe isn't a broad issue, this is pretty isolated. It doesn't shift from turn into a governance issue. It's just a piece of feedback that we can respond to.
Yeah. So much stuff that you're juggling. How is your job? How's the job of the general manager today different than it was maybe when you first started out? You go back to your early years, and is it North Dakota where Oxbow is?
Yeah, it's
You
hard to
know,
even hard. You never forget where you came from, and that place taught me a ton. It's a
yeah.
different job there for a lot of reasons, but uh,
Just in general in the industry, though. I mean, it seems like it's just everything has gotten a little bit more complex. There's way more data even to pour through to really understand and to learn that I think some people expect club leaders to know more about certain things, and managing people and hiring is harder. And,
yeah.
there's just so many variables now.
Yeah, there for sure are, and I mean, candidly, I think that's why governance is so important. The only thing that makes it harder is when you've got 10 or 15 people trying to manage all those things without any alignment on direction. And so, I think the biggest things that have changed about the job is member expectations are higher, and the business is more complex, whether that be inflation and costs, access, balancing access and member counts in the financials, whether that be all of the different unique businesses that now kind of fall under the club umbrella, from food and beverage to retail to fitness to racket sports to events. So I think that the member experience has got high expectations and it's a little more complicated. Leading and managing people gets harder every day, without question. And then I think on the governance front, just expectations are high for what the general manager is going to bring to the table day in and day out, and so being comfortable with that, being prepared to be accountable for that, is probably a new sense of pressure that maybe didn't exist in the same light 10 or 15 years ago. But I can't think of a more fun time to be doing it.
Is it, I mean, this is kind of a relative question, but it seems, well, I'll just ask you, is it more important that you take the time to develop a really strong team around you as a club manager than maybe it was 15, 20 years ago, do you think? I mean, could you get away with more? It seemed like in the old days, you'd go to some club. It's like, yeah, it's a great golf course, but the food's terrible, but we have a minimum, so we got to go eat it. Now it's like members are not going to tolerate a poor dining experience anymore. I mean, is it, so do you need better people? Like, is there more emphasis around just building a really strong team?
Well, I think to my most recent, I mean, managing and leading people today is really hard. I mean, I eat, the days of having 15 direct reports, are over. And, what the types of individuals you need and leaders you need on your team to manage, in our case, 400 hourly teammates in a variety of different roles. It's absolutely mission critical to have the right people in the right seats around you. I don't, is it a lot different than today? I think maybe the last question too, it's expectations are higher and it's a little more complex than it used to be, right? To your point, you
Mhm.
know, 25, 30 years ago, just, dad was going to the club to play golf. The family would maybe have, dinner there from time to time. But, Interlachen is the center of our members' lives, and not just one person in the household. In some cases, three, four, five people in the household. They visit here multiple times a week. Some people are here 6 days, some 7 days a week.
Mhm.
Um, and so you absolutely need the right people. And, we place as much emphasis on that as anything we do to say all this other stuff we're talking about doesn't matter if we don't have the right people. So,
What advice do you give to a young general manager who's maybe starting out and they're feeling like they're in a pressure cooker a little bit, a lot of eyeballs on them, maybe their first real experience running a club? I mean, what do especially now, given what you're saying, even about managing people and all these variables, what would you tell that person? What do they need to really focus on first?
I mean, it's probably overly simplified. Three things every time. First, be prepared to work hard and work a little bit harder than everybody else. Yeah, I've got a brother who's just shy of 30, and it's like, lucky for you, that's a lot easier today than it used to be. If you just work a little harder than everybody else, that's still not as hard as people who maybe were working 10 years ago. So be prepared to work a little bit harder. Two, maintain a positive attitude. Things aren't going to go as planned. Things are going to change. And the person that shows up to every day with a positive attitude that lifts up their team, lifts up their membership, is going to get ahead. And then be flexible and adaptable. Clubs have been historically slow to change. We don't like to reference COVID much here or what we learned from COVID, but one thing we did learn is we could change faster. If we had an idea, we could implement it faster. And that made our member experience better then, and I think that's still true today. And so, if you get a piece of feedback you can respond to quickly, like that speed to execution and the ability to adapt and pivot, is going to get you ahead.
Awesome. I've got one other question I just want to ask you. How much, how important has it been that you've really dived into just like business leadership and that you've taken the time to become a student of some of I mean, the things you talk about, I read a ton of that stuff as well. And there is discipline in a lot of the books that are published out there. And it can shape who you are as a leader. How important do you think that is for young people who are getting started in these leadership roles?
Yeah, mission critical. I mean, whether it be the complexity and expectations of the member experience, whether it be the challenges leading people today, or getting governance right, um, having a skill set and those disciplines will matter. It will get you ahead. It will help you deliver a better experience. It'll help you lead your team better, and it will demonstrate to your board that they can trust you and empower you to run the business like you should. These are concepts and principles that they see in their everyday business life and careers, and it needs to show up at the club in the same way. So, I certainly don't take everything I read. I certainly didn't take everything I learned in school. But the reality is, you know, you're you're running a club, but that club is a business, and the product is the experience. And if you're not thinking about it that way, um, I think it's harder for all of those other things to reach their full potential.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Joel.
Of course. Good
I
to see you.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you for listening. If you find episodes like this helpful, be sure to share it and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're using. Until next time, keep crushing your club marketing.